1% of the wasted energy in the world, offers the hope of a decent life to 8 billion people, and solves an economic problem.
So why is he wrong, Michael? What is the intrinsic value of Bitcoin beyond the fact that people have ascribed value to it and believe in it?
Again, it's the most disruptive technology of our lifetime. And so it's the butt of jokes. Comedians will make fun of it. I imagine that comedians probably made jokes about planes, trains, and automobiles in their time. He's wrong because you could knock them off one at a time. The greater fool observation. Why is he wrong about that? He's wrong because when the Romans pumped water into a reservoir, they didn't put it in the reservoir because they thought a greater fool would pay them more money for the water in the future. They put it in the reservoir because they thought they might need water in the future. When you actually store food in a refrigerator, you don't put it in the refrigerator because you're going to sell it to a greater fool in the future. You put it in the refrigerator because you think you might be hungry in the future. And when you charge your battery, you don't put electricity in a battery because you want to sell it to a greater fool in the future. You put electricity in your battery because you need the power in the future. So he doesn't understand that this is really, in essence, storing energy for future use. And the idea that you shouldn't store energy for future use is a silly notion, right? And I think there's biblical stories about, the comedian making fun of people that stored up, during times of plenty against a famine. And then 7 years of famine come, and the people that actually stored the food live, and the people that didn't store the food starve to death. So Bill is like making light of storing energy in order to live a better life in the future. People that don't understand energy systems, right? They don't understand reservoirs. They don't understand batteries. They don't understand aqueducts. They don't understand refrigerators, right? They just don't understand. But if he understood it, then he wouldn't make that joke.
Well, maybe he'll watch this interview and some of your other interviews and get a better grasp of it. But I get your point, obviously, store of value, a way to store energy. But on the whole topic of energy, he did also go off on how environmentally unfriendly Bitcoin was raging on about the massive carbon footprint. I mean, the stats differ. Some say Bitcoin has a carbon footprint comparable to that of New Zealand, that it consumes more electricity than the entire annual energy consumption of the Netherlands. I mean, various different stats from various different sources. According to the Cambridge Bitcoin Electricity Consumption Index, Bitcoin mining operations worldwide now use energy at the rate of the same annual domestic electric consumption of the entire nation of Sweden. Michael, different stats, but they emphasize the fact that there's huge energy consumption here. In this era of sustainability and ESG and Green New Deals, do you see that as a potential issue?
Well, first of all, I think there's something cruel and tasteless about an entitled rich white male that wants to deprive billions of poor women and children and men in Africa, Asia, and South America of the basic human right of economic self-preservation so he can generate some laughs. And so I think the entire Bitcoin community, they just find it to be tasteless, what he's done, and elitist. With regard to the energy, again, he's a comedian. He hasn't spent 100 hours studying it. The world generates 160,000 terawatt hours of energy a year. Of that, 50,000 terawatt hours of energy is wasted, like 30%. Of that, 120 terawatt hours is used to run the entire Bitcoin network. To put that in perspective, that's 7.5 basis points of all the energy in the world. The truth of the matter is everything on Earth uses more power than a small country. Bill Maher uses 10 times, or electricity that costs 10 times as much as the electricity used in the Bitcoin network to enrich himself. And he's not really thinking about it. if you take all the energy used in the Bitcoin network, it amounts to 25 basis points of all the wasted energy. So 1/4% of the wasted energy in the world offers the hope of a decent life to 8 billion people and solves an economic problem. But the 25 basis points is of the wasted energy, because the Bitcoin network is the bidder of last resort for all energy. So if you eliminated Bitcoin from the world and you robbed the billions of people of a decent chance at a decent life, then you wouldn't stop any waste. You're still going to waste 50,000 terawatt hours of energy. So he's focused upon a nothing. If you actually study the Bitcoin network, you'll find that there's about $1 trillion of assets under management. It's secured by about $2 billion worth of energy a year. Call it 20 basis points. 20 basis points of the energy in the network is the cost to secure it. Now, that energy probably costs about 2 cents a kilowatt hour. That's what's being paid for it, maybe. And in many cases, it is literally discarded energy and there is zero value for it. No one would pay anything for it. So its marginal value of the human race is literally zero. Whereas the marginal cost of consumer energy and industrial energy is 9 to 11 or 11 to 13 cents a kilowatt hour. When people are watching Bill Maher on their iPads and their iPhones, they're paying at least 13 cents a kilowatt hour. Plus, they pumped it into their lithium ion batteries on their devices, which probably jacked up the cost by a factor of 10. He's got no problem with them getting laughs, right? Wealthy people getting laughs on expensive energy. Meanwhile, people that are destitute in the rest of the world have a chance at a decent life using marginal cast-off energy, and anybody would deny them that. Right? I can only say, giving him the benefit of a doubt, he's a comedian, and he's playing this for laughs, and his job is to act like a fool. And if you take economic, political, or technical advice from a fool, what does that make you?
All right, well, let's point taken, but let's separate like the Bill Maher aspect, even though I did use him to get into the conversation. And the conversation is this idea that there is this narrative that it's an environmental threat. Is that something that you see derailing the rise of Bitcoin in any way, shape, or form?
I don't think so, because as I pointed out, right, there are 50,000 terawatt hours of wasted energy, and this is literally 25 basis points of that. It's a nothing. If you're concerned about the environment, you're going to focus in on the dirty energy sources, and there's 100x or 1,000x bigger target in a lot of other areas. If you look at the energy consumption of the Bitcoin network, one of the characteristics of the proof of work network is that you only mine Bitcoin in a jurisdiction where the energy is cast off, stranded, or recycled, therefore marginally non-valuable. And you also only mine it in a place where you're politically welcome. So no one's going to set up a coal power plant in the middle of Central Park, Manhattan, and mine Bitcoin because it wouldn't be politically welcome. In fact, in any country where they were to decide that the Bitcoin miners are not welcome because they use energy, the miners are just going to move to a different country. And one of the powerful characteristics of the Bitcoin network is the fact that it is constantly decentralizing to the most politically supportive jurisdiction. It's also decentralizing to the place where energy is the least expensive, probably the cleanest renewable energy, but certainly the least expensive energy anywhere in the world. And the other thing that happens is, the miners are constantly securing the network because they're upgrading the technology all the time. And the miners are, because they're capital intensive, they're raising capital from financiers in each of these political jurisdictions all the time. And the combination of those things means that wherever mining's not welcome, it's going to move. And wherever it moves to, it's going to be by definition welcome. And it's going to be very harmonious with the energy grid. So I don't really think that the energy usage of Bitcoin represents a threat.